What up, everybody? It's your boy Vin Vin from the Slice Session Elevated Talk, and this is the first ever Slice Session DOLO Session, and we're going to be talking about something that I love, which is wrestling. AJ Styles' retirement was in the works already, I feel. Reigns and Morgan winning the Royal Rumble. What does that mean for the landscape of WrestleMania? So we're going to talk about those topics and a little bit more on wrestling, and we're going to get to it right now. So first and foremost, Royal Rumble started off very similar like it does every year, at least the last few years now with the Women's Royal Rumble match. And there were some people who were just not loving the match. They believe that it was drawn out. And I will say this, over the last few years, it does seem to have been a little drawn out when it comes to the Ladies Royal Rumble, and I'm not sure why. It always seems like they start really, really great and then they end really great, but the middle, the meat in the sandwich it's just not as exciting as it could be. And I have the same feeling when it comes to the Men's Royal Rumble too. You start good, you end well. There were a lot of things that I think as a fan we wanted to see, and we just didn't see it, unfortunately. But let's get into, obviously, the winner of the Women's Royal Rumble, which was Liv Morgan. And I will say this, with her return, it was kind of obvious. The thing that I don't necessarily like is they were putting out there the favorites for Royal Rumble weeks ahead. And what was crazy about it a little bit is Roman Reigns was on the Pat McAfee show and basically stated that the WWE has not evolved in some time, that they're kind of stagnant, they're in the same spot. And then here he comes in to win the Royal Rumble. And I don't know. He's a part-timer. I admire his work. I admire the story arcs. I admire his wrestling that he has been able to show us all. And, being the longest reigning champion, there is something to be said for that. Even in a semi-scripted sport, it's still very much a sport to me. I think it is very intense sport. You can get hurt very easily. So I don't look at it as like it's not a sport. I know there's some people who do not appreciate or even acknowledge that WWE is a sport, whether it's on ESPN or not. But I am one of those people that does, because I've been watching wrestling for some time. Yes, the punches are fake sometimes, and I've seen it firsthand. They don't hit as hard. They don't hit at all. But at the same time, I really believe that what is happening now is I don't know how good it is for the business. I'll say that. With Reigns winning, it means that there's going to be a story arc. And if you watched Monday Night Raw the next day, he came out to confront CM Punk, and there was a heated exchange of words. And Reigns wound up basically saying, I'm not choosing you because of this, or this. I'm choosing you because I hate you. So the story arc now is that there is obviously that rivalry between CM Punk and Roman Reigns, and there kind of always has been. And I think that it is going to make for a somewhat of a compelling story. I think as we go further down the line, we get to Elimination Chamber in in a handful of weeks. It is going to be interesting to see who wins that, because a few weeks ago, if not, maybe about a couple weeks ago, Triple H put out that he was going to, anybody who won that Elimination Chamber would have a shot at whoever they wanted. Now, that is not typical. Usually it is anybody who you pick in the Royal Rumble, the person who wins the Elimination Chamber, they go after that next title. So whoever has the WWE Undisputed Championship at that time of WrestleMania, which as of right now is Drew McIntyre, that person who wins the Elimination Chamber will go against them. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe they have a match between the winner of the Royal Rumble and the winner of Elimination Chamber in between the Chamber and WrestleMania, to really see if they get to choose who they want. So it may be not set in stone right now that CM Punk and Roman Reigns are actually going to fight each other at WrestleMania. They say that now, but we really won't know until that time comes. What I will say is, again, the part-time winning stuff, I'm not sure about. Last year when Charlotte Flair came back to the Royal Rumble and then won, right? I thought it was going to be a good arc for her. She had been out for a little bit, came back. They didn't really do too much with it. They didn't really make it seem like she was going to be consistent. People were just not as happy, I think, to have her come back. So to have Liv Morgan come back and win and see the reaction of the crowd and see the reaction after the fact, I think they made the right call with Liv. I did want Rhea Ripley to win. I just really want to see her back in the singles division again. But I do love her with Io Sky. I think that the two of them together are pretty phenomenal. They're a great tag team, but I just really want to see Rhea, and I want to see Io in the singles division too. I mean, Io Sky is probably one of the greatest wrestlers, not just women wrestlers, but greatest wrestlers that I've seen in a long time. Just her fluidity in the ring, and the fact that she takes care of people in the ring, and you can tell, you know what I mean? And that's very important. At the end of the day, with this being a semi-scripted sport, You know, people are jumping off of ladders and turnbuckles and jumping out of the ring. You have to protect each other. And I think EO and Rhea, for that matter, does a great job with that. There are some ladies in the division that are just atrocious, and we'll get to that at some point. But right now, I don't know what the landscape of WrestleMania is going to bring. We do know right now that Reigns and Punk is going to be one of the main events. If not, you know, obviously the main event. We don't know if it's going to be day one or day two, but we don't know if that's going to stay. So we really have to be mindful that it may or may not be what we see it as right now. But at the end of the day, I really believe that there were some other highlights and lowlights, in my opinion. So we'll get to the AJ Styles retirement right now. AJ was not somebody, when he came to wrestling in 2016, when he debuted at the Royal Rumble in 2016, I wasn't watching wrestling like that. I had kind of taken a hiatus. And so I really wasn't sure of how much of an impact that he had. I had to do some research and realize what he had done for TNA Wrestling and other promotions that he had been a part of. And that's why Vince decided to bring him on in 2016. And it was a smart move. He came and he's been phenomenal, literally, since then. And I just do not like the arcs that are happening when it comes to Gunther and his career killer moniker. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of Gunther, and it is what it is. Like, I'm just not a fan of the character that he is. I think that he just, and obviously he's a villain, you know, he's a heel. So obviously people like me and other fans are supposed to feel the way that they feel. But I just don't agree with, I agree with the Goldberg situation. You know, he was coming one and done. It seemed like that. Then he moves on from that. And the John Cena, don't even get me started on that. The smirk, the everything. I think the end of that match was horrible. It will go down in history as probably one of the worst ends of a wrestling match I've ever seen, because it almost broke the fourth wall, right? So we know at that point, yes, he's getting choked out, but it just was not right. So this whole sleeper hold situation, that's what I didn't like. I also did not like that that's how they decided to end AJ's career. I just don't. I don't think that was the right move. I think he has been saying that he wanted to do a full year of tour, so to speak, or a full year of being able to fight some of the people that he wanted to fight. I don't know if in the background WWE was like, listen, your time is up here. I don't know. I'm not a part of the creative process, but I don't know if this was something that he pushed on himself. I do know that he did win the rights, trademark rights to his own name and things like that. And that has kind of grew speculation that he might be jumping ship to AEW to actually have a tour where he can actually finish his career the way that he wants to finish it. I don't know. The way that they ended it made it seem like WWE was pretty much done with him and done with the arc. They didn't want to go do that. I don't ever think that he was going to be a John Cena type of a situation where you have a certain amount of dates and you're going to face. That's not what they wanted to do. And I don't think that's what he wanted to do. I think, honestly, he wanted to be able to just go out on his own terms. So I don't like the ending of that. I don't like Gunther choking him out. I don't like the referee just one arm and it's dangled and it's done. I know that that's part of wrestling and I know that was part of the story arc, but I do not agree with it. I don't think that that's how they should have ended it. I just don't. You know, I can remember back in the day when Vince was doing the creative piece of WWE, I can remember how easy it was, it seemed like, to be able, almost like when you can bet on wrestling now. It was so easy to know who was going to win just based on looking at the story arcs and what was coming up into finish and things like that. Vince was very much short and long term. So there was a lot of stories that were shorter term stories that were going to have a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Very quickly. Then you had your stories that would draw out a little bit. Now, when I say draw out a little bit, I don't think Vince was thinking 2-3 years in advance. I think maybe at most he was thinking, a year in advance for some of these stories. When the switch came over to Triple H, what I've realized is that the creative process and how they tell a story now is not just, I'm not thinking about 6 months ahead or a year or two. Maybe I'm thinking even 3 years ahead. So that does kind of affect the way that you think about who is going to win and who's not. And it does make it a little bit more difficult to decide who is going to win these matches, because I understand the story arc of it. And I understand that people want a little bit more of a story versus it being like this match and then they win. The whole situation with Cody Rhodes and him finishing his story, we all wanted it to be at WrestleMania 40. It didn't happen, right? We were upset. It didn't happen, but there was still more to pull out of that story. There was still more to dissect with that story. So I think pushing it to another year, WrestleMania, and maybe that was their goal the entire time. As a fan, I was pissed because I wanted him to finish that story. But then when I realized that there was so much more dynamic between Reigns and Rhodes, I realized like there was still more that could have been pulled from it. So I completely understand and agree with why they decided to wait until WrestleMania 41 to have him finish a story. But there was so much that changed in that year. There was such an intense dynamic. So when we think about the creative process now with wrestling, it is difficult. We can't just turn away and say this is what's going to happen at this PLE or on this episode of Raw or this episode of SmackDown. We really can't. And I think that it does add a little bit of an excitement, but it also, as a fan who has been watching wrestling at a young age, being able to see who was potentially going to win and just kind of know, right? And then not knowing has been a little bit of an issue. There have been some wrestlers, and Triple H teased, oh, there's going to be so many surprises, so many surprises. There were some surprises, right? You have Braun Breaker coming in at number 2 after Obafemi, right? And a masked man comes out of nowhere. Masked man stomps him out. The thing is, the last time we seen a masked man, it turned out to be Austin Theory. So there is a rumor going around that it's potentially Austin Theory again, who's playing a double agent, so to speak, for Seth Rollins. So that'll be interesting and an interesting dynamic to see if that's really what's going on. But I don't really know that either. We have to see how the story plays out. But I do think that there was not as many surprises as I thought there was going to be, especially in the Men's Royal Rumble. Mr. Iguana coming in, some other people, Royce Keys, formerly known as Powerhouse Hobbs. That, to me, I already knew he was coming. It wasn't an excitement. It wasn't, this is something new. There were so many rumors out there that it just kind of made sense. The one person that I thought I was going to see, especially at entrant number 30, was Chris Jericho. And while Chris Jericho is still listed on AEW and is still technically he's not under contract, so to speak, that we know of, but he's still listed in AEW. It made sense that obviously he wasn't going to return, but I was really expecting to hear that break the walls down and to see him. And it just sucked because as a fan of Chris Jericho and a fan of that time frame, right? It sucks that he didn't return. So I was thinking, like, do they build him up like Vince did, right? With the whole Y2K situation and Y2J situation, right? Do they build him up like that? Who knows? I don't even know if he's going to be coming at all at this point because I was really anticipating him coming at Royal Rumble, even though people were like, that wouldn't be a good look if he came during Royal Rumble. I think it would have been a perfect look for him. I think it would have been a perfect look for him to come into the Royal Rumble and win the Royal Rumble, and then have him for the next year in WWE and win the title and maybe lose the title to somebody like, Cody Rhodes or something like that, have them chase that dynamic, have them go back to AEW times of their little bit of issues that they had and bring that to light. You know what I'm saying? So I really don't know. And at the end of the day, what really is important is that if you are a fan of wrestling, that you continue to watch these stories, you continue to understand that these stories are going to continue to build off of one another. And I think that is the hardest piece of it, is trying to figure out the dynamic between who is going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to be a heel, who's not going to be a heel, or who's going to be a babyface rather. And there has been so much speculation that due to this situation with Rhodes losing the title to Drew McIntyre, that he was going to turn heel. And the audience has no interest in Cody Rhodes being a heel. Like, they don't. Drew McIntyre is another one who I do not believe can stand at the top for as long as he can. He's a good wrestler, but is he great? Is he the WWE champion? Is he somebody that you put the whole company on their back and let him go? No. And that's my opinion, but that's just, to me, that's fact. The first time he won the championship, he won it during COVID. So there was nobody in there. So I could get them giving him the opportunity, but I don't like it. I think it would have made more of an impact if you see Drew McIntyre face CM Punk and win against CM Punk because of their dynamic and the fact that they really don't like each other. I think that would have made more sense. But I know that it came out that Cody was pushing for this to happen because he wanted to be in the chase going into WrestleMania, going into Royal Rumble and into WrestleMania. I completely understand that piece of it, but I don't know. There are so many storylines, so many arcs, and we haven't even gotten into other things. I thought Jacob Fatu was a dark horse. I thought he was going to potentially at least be at the end of this. I don't know what they're doing with him, but he is one of my favorite wrestlers right now. I think his athleticism, he looked great. He looked great. He was gone for a little bit, but he looked great. He looked like he lost a little weight. He looked like he got a little bit more cut. I think that's dangerous for every wrestler out there because he really reminds me of Umaga. If anybody remembers Umaga, like He is part of the Anoa'i family. You know, he is in the lineage, and he was a beast. He was a savage. Like, he was a beast. And I look at Fatu and I'm just like, damn. He goes out there and he's doing flips off the turnbuckle. He's doing all kinds of different things. And I just feel like, why are we not pushing him a little bit more, right? Why is he not in the scene? If Jey Uso can win last year, which I loved. I love Jey Uso too. Big fan of the Usos. I'm a big fan of the bloodline period situation. But if somebody like Jey Uso can win, right, and then win the world title, why can't somebody like Fatu win? Why can't Fatu go after, Drew McIntyre and have it be, Fatu versus Rhodes at WrestleMania? Can you imagine that? So Fatu still has an opportunity if he gets into the Elimination Chamber to make that happen, and I would love to see that. I don't think there's many people out there that wouldn't love to see that because he's a dynamic wrestler, absolutely dynamic. The stuff that he does for a guy his size, even before he lost his weight and before he got all cut up again, crazy, absolutely crazy. He's surpassed Solo. Absolutely has surpassed Solo. I also don't like what they've done to Solo Sikoa. I don't like the whole, he wrestles, but the flair for him is gone. And I don't understand it. He was at the top there. He was at the world title situation for a while too. So for him to go away as well, it just changes the dynamic of everything from now until Elimination Chamber and from Elimination Chamber on until WrestleMania. So it is going to be interesting to see what stories continue to develop. It's going to be interesting to see what stories stop. And this was very much geared towards the men's side of the wrestling situation going into Royal Rumble. If this Dolo session goes well, we will talk about the women's side and what that means. Like I said, I made comments about how I would like to see Io and Rhea back into the singles division, but I do realize that tag team division for the women was not that great. So I understand what they were doing. I understand why they did it. I just wish that they would get them back there a little sooner. I thought what was going to happen, honestly, was you were going to see similar to what happened with Asuka, right, and Kyrie. I thought that was going to happen between Io and Rhea. And I was going to think that Rhea was going to overreact and make it so the two of them would start to have cracks in their foundation. They would lose the title. They would blame each other for losing the title, or Rhea would blame Io for losing the title. They'd want to fight, right? That's where I thought this was headed. I'm kind of glad in a way that it's not necessarily heading that way and that I was a little wrong because, like I said, the two of them together is dynamic. But I do wish that they gave an opportunity to Io. They gave an opportunity to Rhea again, and I hope they do soon. I really do. So that's a little teaser for the next one if you want to continue this. I really do like talking about wrestling. Can you tell? So if there's anything that you want me to talk about on the Slice Dolo session, WWE edition, let me know and we'll get to it. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for watching the show. Again, this is the Slice Session Elevated Talk, the Slice Dolo session. I am your host, Vin Vin, and I can't wait until we get to the next video. Until next time, we do it all over a slice. Deuces.